Today on the podcast, I am so pumped to introduce you to Mohsin Modi-Din, founder and CEO of MeWe International. He's an artist and he's an activist, a global nonprofit that builds communication and storytelling interventions for psychological well-being, leadership development, and community engagement. He has been in Gaza, he's been in Syrian refugee camps, and he's using communication as a space for transforming the trauma of those who are living under violence. It's super incredible, and being a mental health worker and storyteller who are serving kids right now is exactly what we need. He is a hero. Mohsin's innovative work has reached thousands of people across more than 12 countries, beginning with his Fulbright scholarship in 2010. He has been a featured speaker at the World Economic Forum, United Nations, MIT, TEDx, and his work on MeWe Syria has been published at the United Nations, Innovation, Vice, and Al Jazeera. I am telling you, buckle up. This was the most hopeful, empowering, smart, curious conversation. You're going to hear about the narrative that America is telling itself right now and the story that we could be telling ourselves to change. You're also going to hear about some neuroscience, and you're going to hear about the power of storytelling for mental health and actually authoring your own life. So I'm raising teenage boys. So when you talk about language and
Wow.
what we're saying and what we're not saying, and
Wow.
also we're a multiracial family. They're in high school. It's shocking to hear. I'm like,
Yeah.
you really think that? And,
Yes.
well, yeah, we all do. I want kids to see what's possible when
Yeah.
we make a choice for all of us
Yeah. And
instead
it's
of.
hard to do that in today's culture, especially in this country, because like a lot of the youth I'm working with, I mean, look, suicide is one of the highest killers of young people today. Anxiety and depression are some of the fastest growing diagnoses in the world today. Like when we're talking, I have four kids, right? So when we talk about youth, children and youth, there is a huge epidemic happening, especially after the pandemic, of there is less and less time and space to talk back to your thoughts. And that's a skill because not every thought we have is a fact. It's just a thought. But when we're living in a culture where thoughts are being manifesting out as everything is this and it's all put out there and it's a fact, it's no, that's not the case. You need time and space to talk back to your brain and to your body and to your thoughts. And that's where regulation and perspective taking come in. And it's a big component of the work I do around the world is using evidence-based tools and practices in communication and storytelling for psychosocial support that really focuses on how can you talk back to your brain and your body when you're feeling anxiety or when you're feeling depressed or when you're feeling suicidal or when you're living in a toxic culture that's dehumanizing you.
Even if you buy into it, because I feel like many of us, we've been told this is how it is. And
Yeah.
so even you want to belong as a woman, this is what you got to be, or as like whatever gender you are, it has to be this way. So even when we buy into these stories that dehumanize humanity, I don't think they can live without it. Why I really do my work and my life is for peace.
Mm,
Because I think that peace defends people.
mhm,
And I truly believe it gives us what war can't, which is justice and joy. And I don't know how our kids are going to exist without justice and joy. I don't think our spirit can. I don't think our world can, though it's cheaper and easier to deny it
mm,
from some and take it all for ourselves. I think we need those things.
mhm.
Tell the truth.
That's beautiful. I
Mhm.
love how you frame it, justice and joy. I like those two things together.
I am part of a community that helps families who are unsheltered
Mm,
and go and make tacos on a Tuesday and hang out.
mm,
I'm happy that my kids can go to bed with a full belly, but I will never have joy until
mm,
every kid in my city
mm,
has a full belly. So I'm gonna do that till the day I die. I'm gonna fight for that. And I think that fight is what actually gives us some of the mental resiliency and purpose.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Viktor Frankl, I'm a
Oh, yeah.
fan of that
Masters of
guy.
healing. Of course. Logotherapy, huge. component. Yeah, I mean, what psychiatrist or psychologist, right, that survived a concentration camp, right?
Four. I
Yeah,
think he
sure.
survived four of them. But the thing that I keep thinking about him is that he made it through those camps, and the purpose he had was his wife and his unborn child. And then the fact that he came back and had to find out that they were gone,
Mm,
that he had to come up with a new purpose
mhm,
and live through that grief and trauma. And then somehow have a very productive next 40 years. That's the real proof
mhm.
that he could live
Practically what he
life
preached. Yeah,
with
yeah,
all of that.
yeah.
And I saw an interview with him on how he's taking flying lessons.
I gotta see that. I've
Oh,
never.
you can barely understand him because he's got the cutest little accent. But he was saying that he's taking flying lessons. And with your trajectory, he said that if we overshoot, think of people as better than they actually are,
Mhm.
then they become better.
Yeah.
But if we see people as they currently are and what their actions are, he said they'll oftentimes underperform.
Hmm.
He said being an exaggerated optimist is actually the way that we help people become
Yeah.
better.
Uplift to elevate. Yeah.
We do it with planes. We overshoot here and then we land here. And I was like, dang it, Victor, again. Seeing people's possibility instead of their actions is how we fuel a
Mm,
better story,
yeah, it's how we can have peace. Be
right?
peaceful.
So I think that we have been just born into a country that wages war in multiple ways. Physically, we've been doing it for every year except for 17 years in our history. We've only been at peace for 17 years out of 250. And I
Wow.
think born into these political wars and just these religious wars and, the war on drugs, the war on poverty. We don't know anything except for war, but I think waging peace is how we show up and fight for what we want. But we actually win because we're winning people. We're not eliminating people.
Hmm.
We're winning them to the side that says we all deserve justice and joy, and I'll fight for you. Whether you know me or not, whether you trust me, whether we agree or not, I will fight for you. And I think that's how we change a culture that only knows war
Mm.
and say, yeah, take that same thing, but we're going to use those tools, but we're going to get what we want because war never gives us what we want.
I mean, you've seen it yourself. I mean, firsthand. I
Yeah.
think it's power. It's also who's saying it. It's like coming from you, it's very, very powerful, you know.
Well, thank you, because it's a tough time out there. I'm just gonna say it, Mohsin.
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like speaking things, I'm like, I don't know that I can take it.
It's a lot. It's hard. I mean, yeah, this is at least from the humanitarian perspective side, this has been the most threatening, dangerous time, that we're living in. I mean, a lot of my colleagues are losing their jobs. A lot of my colleagues are getting attacked physically and mentally. We're living in a time where the defenders of this world are in need of defense. And we're living in a time where the helpers of this world are in deep need of being helped.
Mm.
And it's backward. But I think I don't know. This is a time where I'm just sick of fear, man. This is a time of faith. And I'm not talking in a religious sense, just like having faith in something instead of fearing everything, I think is going to be the pathway to get us out of that cycle that we find ourselves in right now. But if you can't do it for yourself, then I mean, you got to start there. If I don't have compassion for myself, and if I can't hold the multiple perspectives and contradictions within myself, then how the hell am I going to do that for other people? You
Right.
know?
But I feel like it's the hardest for me. I'm like, I can show up for other people. I can fight for my kids because I want them to know their value. I want them to know that the world needs them to be themselves.
Mhm.
But to show up for myself, I feel like sometimes it's way harder to do that. It's like, man,
Yeah, that's all of us. I mean, anyone that's in service or in community service, and social, I mean, that's why a lot of us burn out. And
right,
that's why a lot of activists and peace builders are burning out. That's why, in America, there was a time a few years ago where the suicide rates of physicians was higher than the in the military. And like that's a, you know, so that focus I think is really important. I remember like, going into Gaza, for example, last year was I had to be so mentally clean with myself before I did anything going in there because what are you bringing in with you, you know? And it took months of preparation to like really be grounded and really be forgiving and being, as the saying goes, the rest between the notes, taking time to prepare and rest and like re-energize. And then after Gaza, the same thing. I think like, but people don't have that luxury. I was in a nutrition clinic that was also acting in Gaza and Rafah as the bombs were falling. And it was a mobile clinic that was also acting as like a first point of care, right, for people that were injured. And the doctors and nurses who were Palestinian themselves have been displaced five, six, seven times. Themselves are starving and hungry and thirsty. Themselves are grieving, and they hadn't stopped.
Yeah.
And in between their shifts, we had 45 minutes in between their shifts where 40 or so of them came into the one space of the mobile clinic with me. And it was the first moment in months, they told me, where they just were able to sit, to breathe, and to share stories about some of the lives that they were able to save instead of just holding it all in.
Uh,
And that was oxygen for them, that 45 minutes. You know what I mean? Because before they reasonably so, they felt like they didn't had no time or space and it wasn't we have to go. Like people are dropping all around us. Like, but there's also this other element of it is like we have to fight. I think a part of peace building and peace is also fighting to make a space for yourself, for rest,
yeah.
for reflection.
You're one of the only humanitarians or peace builders or activists that I've heard has either said out loud or admitted I had to have some time before I went into that. I had to be spiritually clean, mentally clean. I needed to care for myself first.
Oh
Because
yeah.
there's the people who run in when the house is burning, and that's a lot of the people who do this work. And I think it comes at a cost where I don't think about taking care of myself.
Yeah.
When you've been in a place of bombs and bullets, they're just like that ricochets in my body. And that's why
Yeah.
I care. And that's why I can't not. But that doesn't remind me that I still got to take care of me too.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause it compels you to do the work, but it doesn't always remind you that you have the trauma from the reason why you care so much is because
Yeah.
it's connected to you.
Inside of you. Yeah.
That has its own
But
that
then like,
care.
I also had my friend who always checks me. He's a neuroscientist and his name's Mike Niconchuk. And it was 2 days before I knew I was going to go into Gaza. And he was talking to me and he was like, stay alive. And then when you go in there, he's like, leave the things that brought you to this work out
You know?
to a degree. Because in our field too, there's a tendency sometimes where we are unaware or not conscious enough of how much of our own heaviness and pain and suffering we're actually bringing into a space. And it was really helpful for me because it really helped me clean my intention. And I realized I needed to take space. I had the privilege, obviously, of really paying attention. For me, it was tapping into my spirituality and calling on spiritual leaders that I could trust to actually like help me get centered and clean my intention. And that includes, I did a sweat ceremony with people from the indigenous communities here in North America, and it really helped a lot too. There was just things that had the privilege of doing and experiencing that really helped. But I think we're not paying enough attention to that as practitioners who are coming from a privileged space to actually really practice what we preach. I think it's super important.
Well, thank you for saying that. Thank you for being in Gaza with healthcare workers. I'm also an RN, and my husband is
Oh,
a physician, and he cares for the folks outside of the system.
wow.
There's a honor of that. It's sacred.
Yeah.
Many of us know that many of us are still not okay from COVID.
Yeah.
I think caring for those means so much to me because I want every healthcare person to get to share the stories. I did hospice nursing right out of
Wow.
nursing school. I'm like, who is this 23-year-old, right?
You've
But
had a life. You've had a life.
I knew that I would come home at midnight often. There's a 3 to 11 shift. I get home at midnight and then I would just need to tell the story of the
Mm.
person who died. So I'd lay in bed and my husband would hug me and he'd hear about Dolores who made egg cartons for her job at a factory and never got married because she stayed home to take care of her dad who was sick. I needed to cry and tell Dolores's story in order to honor her and in a way close that part of where I got to take care of her as she passed. You could say you don't know this person, you only knew them 3 days, but I don't know, there's something deeply human. I grieve Dolores. Whether she was a good person, I don't know what she did. She could have been a mass murderer, but I needed to grieve Dolores. And that was kind of my process was telling their story. And then I could kind
Yeah.
of re-enter the next story.
I think it's really beautiful what you're sharing because it speaks to like a lot of what we teach in MeWe, which is I think there's a writer, Mary Oliver, and she said, in the end, all we ever are and will remain as is stories. It's not going to be governments, nations, banks, currencies. It's
Oh,
the stories that survive, that are eternal. They can be. And our stories and how we hold them, how I hold your stories, Diana, and how you hold mine, how you held Dolores's. If we can master that, then that's how our stories can live on forever, you know. And I firmly believe that every word, every eye glance, every breath, every tone, every point of body language is energy. And that's what we teach communication is. Communication is not the news and it's not Instagram. Communication is the giving and receiving of energy. And stories is the vessel through which we give and receive energies in really profound ways. And so when you're sharing about Dolores, I can't help but thinking that because that's what it is. Like there was something conducting you from an energy and a frequency to talk about Dolores. Rest in peace, Dolores, right? Wherever you are. And that's a human need. And the
and what's
second we lose that, we lose compassion and empathy, and that's dangerous, you know.
right? And there's a research that says that when people make small talk with strangers as they're going about their day, so it's not a deep conversation, it's not a trusted relationship, it's a stranger in the line at the grocery store. Research says those people are happier,
Mm-hmm.
which makes no sense. Our culture tells us to invest deeply in our own
Mm-hmm.
relationships and our own things. But when you talk about the transfer of energy, it's legit. I talked to the dudes in my hardware store. We have a great time. I bump into somebody and you have that little look. You don't even say something, but sometimes if you're in line with somebody and we're all kind of laughing because something's happening, I have no idea why. I am feeling this ricochet of joy because me and a stranger are slightly winking and laughing because something is happening in front of us. But there is something where if I would just tune out earbuds, I would miss
Would have missed that, yeah.
this. And it gives something to me, and I'm still befuddled by it.
This for me is community because that's the feeling of community. That's the feeling of being seen and able to bear witness to something else. And then from that community, there's a connectedness. And as human beings, like that is what keeps us alive is community. And without community connectedness, we cease to be a species. So there's something deep within all of us that is hungry for that interaction that you're talking about. And it is important every day, you know. And it is an important ingredient for peace building and for peace. And if I were, again, just to talk about our brothers and sisters in Palestine and in Gaza, if there were something that we could all learn from them, because they're not just victims, they're testaments to humanity, it's they've maintained that. They have maintained a sense of community. I saw it in Rafah. Women making ovens to bake animal feed and make some type of bread, but using mud and sand and seawater and then sharing it. Kids making tents out of trash and sharing it and flying it in the sky where there's black smoke rising from shelling or a bomb blast, right? Like community is everything. And it's an important element of peace. And I think the thing that drives me is you can't have that without communication. And we are walking around really underestimating the energy and the shaping of our brains and our psychologies and our relationships that words have on us, that narratives have on us. And I think the neuroscience and the research is catching up now, but communication and storytelling, I think, is a very critical ingredient for peace that needs to be taken seriously, you know?
It's so encouraging for me to hear because some of what I hear oftentimes when I speak in places, well, we'll be plain about it. If I speak in churches about nonviolence
Mhm.
and about peace, there's veterans who come up to me after and they're like, "Hey, I had the same experience, but I can't tell anybody here because I don't want to rock the boat or not belong, and I know they'll hate it because somehow Christians hate nonviolence, though Jesus completely disarmed violence and
Mhm.
taught us to lay down the sword, melt
Mhm.
down the sword, and make a garden tool." So I think that there's this thing of communication where we're scared to to speak the truth of something, to communicate something about ourselves.
Mhm.
And I wonder when you say about how we're being shaped by the communication or even lack of, I always kind of come back to, is it greed? Instead of communicating for community's sake
Mhm.
or for connection, are we throwing out words out of greed to shore up more of our own idea, to shore up more of our own commodities or wealth or influence? If communication is for greed instead of connection, is that what we're seeing? There's so much that is not serving people when they're communicating. It is caustic, it's making other people scared to communicate. It is like there's one
Yeah.
person talking and then everybody's got to be a follower, but you're
Yeah.
scared to say something because there is pushback,
Mhm.
not respectful disagreement. Communication seems to be fueled a little bit by greed right now. It doesn't feel equal. It doesn't feel connected. It doesn't feel like people are using communication for community.
I would agree with that. I would add to that. This is very different in different cultures. Like indigenous cultures, it's very different than, for example, where my family's from in Kashmir or in Palestine. But I would say in America right now, there is an acceptance of communication, approaching communication as a tool for transaction. Communication is very transactional. I will say this thing and I will get this thing and you will give me this thing. And it's very transactional. When the philosopher Babbage wrote, communication and language was meant to be a continuation of things. It wasn't meant to be a transaction for a specific output. And that's what community is. Community is not a fixed output of something. Community is, as I've said before, is a living, breathing organism of change. It's a process. And so I would add to what you said is it might not be singularly greed, but certainly that's an element. But I would say meta-wise, even more like scoped out, it would be we're approaching communication from a very transactional lens. It's either security or conflict. It's either I vote for this person or I vote for that person. It's either I get this degree, therefore I'm going to get this job, or if I'm this color and I live in this zip code, then I'm probably can expect X, Y, and Z, income tax bracket or whatever. Like that's not what communication is. Communication is a process and community is a process. But if we keep approaching it as if it's a fixed thing, then we're going to keep weaponizing communication. And that's the time that we're living in. Communication has become a weapon instead of an actual tool for cohesion and growth, which is why the human species created this concept of communication tens of thousands of years ago, you know.
And I love that you're using communication. You say that communication is a space for transformation.
Yes.
And I think taking something that has been so weaponized, like communication is being used to weaponize people against each other. And you are reclaiming that and saying, no, communication is where we create the space for transformation. And I think that
Yes.
it's the bullseye to aim at. It is
Yes.
truth. It is a calling people to
Mhm.
something that says this is what you can choose to use communication for.
Yes. Transformation. What is it that, again, it's science too, right? It was that first law of thermodynamics, right? Matter can neither be created nor destroyed, but only transformed. Like that's how
Okay,
we have to
I
like,
I have a whole thing on that because
yeah,
being a cancer nurse and
yeah,
hospice nurse, people die. We know how much they weigh,
yeah.
but the weight of the entire earth never changes, Mohsin. So you
Wow.
have a 250-pound person who dies and say he's cremated, but somehow energy is neither
Whoa.
gained nor lost, yet the weight of the earth never changes. And I'm like, where does it
Wow.
go? It doesn't leave, but I physically saw a person. This weight and space on the planet Earth is gone, but their weight is still here.
That's so cool. Wow,
It's
man.
awesome. It's really, really cool about the weight of a soul and that we're not just the weight of our bodies. And you can never take that away. So when people talk about the great cloud of witnesses and the saints and the martyrs, they're here.
Mm, mm.
Their
That's so beautiful.
weight
Yeah.
is here with us because it doesn't change even when someone chooses to take a life of a Palestinian life and their weight and their witness is here. You can take the body, but you can't somehow
Mhm.
take.
Yeah. The
So,
essence. Yeah. The
yeah,
energy.
I don't understand it, but I've been so encouraged by getting to hear about your work. And before we wrap up, I always ask people three questions, and they're totally for fun and they're rapid fire. So don't think too hard. I
I
know
got
you're an intellect, so don't work
Am I?
too hard on this one.
Okay.
I kick these around with my teenagers.
I love it. Let's do
Just
it.
go with it, Molson. All right, rapid fire. What is your superpower?
Uh, compassion,
How do you play?
humor with humor.
What is your purpose?
To heal myself and to try and help others heal themselves around me.
That's right.
Wow, that's good.
I will
Wow.
tell you, I ask people after I interview them, and when they come down to what's their purpose, they say exactly what I see. So I'm always like, yeah,
That's so cool.
yeah,
I
you
love
are.
that. I love that. Thank
So
you for that space and that invitation to answer those. That was beautiful.
you're
Thank you.
welcome. So tell your kids at the dinner table tonight what your superpower is.
Oh, great. I'm gonna ask them that. You gave me something to do tonight with my kids at dinner time. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
But
I'll
my
let you know what they
answered.
say.
Molson, thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you.
What is one way that people can support your work, support you, and learn more about how they can be part of supporting people who are all the places that you're working right now, but especially the folks in Gaza?
Yeah, look into our work and share it. We're a storytelling organization, so we uplift and put out stories from the community as well. So stories for us are transformational energies and powers that the world needs to have access to. Representing the underrepresented, I think, is key. If you could follow us on Instagram at MeWe International or go to our website, MeWeINTL.org, and then donating. We are a community-based and led organization, so every donation really, really matters, especially in these times where budgets are being cut, aid is being cut. We really do need support. So donations really help. So if we can get some monthly donors to be on this movement with us, I'd really appreciate that.
Well, this community, the Wage and Peace community, we really believe in ordinary people showing up and committing acts of courage that create justice and joy. This is an action. I call it the Wage and Peace Project because I think of your eighth grade science project where someone
Yeah.
has a notebook, someone's making an experiment. Peace
Yeah.
is the best, most fun group project we're ever going to be part of. People here are always committed to showing up, and then they're also always committed to showing up with their money because we
Mm,
can't all do what you do. We
mm.
can't all travel, but we can all be part of investing in
Yes.
And so I tell people again, like your monthly 25 bucks, choose
Yeah,
organizations right now and be committed. And that is a 10.
it helps a lot. It helps a lot. And I appreciate you giving us the space to be heard and supported and seen. It means a lot to me. So thank you for what you're doing and what you have done, what you'll continue to do. So I
Right?
appreciate it.
And we'll keep up with you and we'll hear stories when you come back. Who knows, maybe we'll get to do a trip together. I feel like there's a lot of good things are
Love
going
to
to
do
happen.
mission together. Yeah, 100%. We're connected now.
That's right. We,
Yeah.
we exchanged energy, a few
Yeah, man.
storytellers.
We're transformers.
Thank you for sharing your stories with us, Mohsin.
Blessings. Salam. Take care.